Welcome to this conversation with musician and beautiful soul Dantès Alexander. In the spirit of authenticity, I chose not to take away the F-bombs.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I've heard a lot about you as well.
Really?
Yes, your reputation precedes you.
Whoa, my mind is blown right now. So is the S silent?
No, so it's actually Dantès. So yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking, by the way.
Of course, which leads me to my other question. Not that it really comes up too much in a one-on-one conversation, but I wanted to know, what are your pronouns?
He, him, they, she, anything in between. As long as you call me something, I don't care.
It's so good to know. And it's like, oh yeah, finding out that you are non-binary, it's like, oh yeah, later on I definitely want to talk about like gender stereotypes, things like this, because it is a subject I am passionate about.
Well, thank you for being so passionate about it. We really appreciate you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a transgender brother, and yeah, life deserves more. People deserve more respect, darn it.
I definitely think so. My life, I feel like, has always been about earning and getting some respect. So I'm all there for that, honey.
So you are an EDM, that's the artist.
Yeah, so like electronic dance music, so house music, pretty much anything that's kind of related to it. I think EDM is probably like a watered down term, I think, for what it really means. I mean, because when you start to talk about like house music, right? House music was for who? It was for the queers, the strange people, it was the outcasts of the church. And that was why, these clubs like Studio 54, the Warehouse, and all of these other like iconic places were like literally like worship temples. And so that's where the like umbrella, like generic term of like EDM came from. So we really want to be specific. It's kind of like, being non-binary, you want to really be specific, because when you say EDM, it's almost like we take away credit from like all of the people who were there sweating and grinding it out from Studio 54 to present. So yeah.
I have no idea about that. That is so fascinating. I know that there is just so much queer history that's just been erased and written over and assimilated. And it's like, wow, this
yeah, there's been a lot
goes so deep.
Yeah, I know, right? It's funny that I even know all of these things, right? Like, how do I know all of these things? It's bizarre.
Because the pioneers in the queer movement managed to maintain history. One of my favorite YouTubers, Bauer, what's his name? I will put it on the screen here. He talks about queer history, like through TV shows from the 70s and like finding the little nuggets hidden in there. And it's so fascinating.
It's very fascinating. It's very fascinating. And then I feel like too, as acceptance starts to open up more, things that, like you said, like ordinarily would not have been discovered, are being discovered. So it's a really great time, I think, for anybody who is like really self-aware of like who they are and where they fit into the spectrum of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have an EP coming out this June.
Yeah, I do.
That
I do.
So exciting.
I am excited. I've tried to wrap my mind around it. Sometimes you're moving so fast that you don't really have a chance to like grasp like everything that's going on around you. And life has really sort of been like that for me. I'm a very humble person, and I come from, a very humble personage. And, to go from all of those things to, having hit singles and EPs and all of that, and moving and shaking with, people that you grew up idolizing, it honestly is overwhelming. And anybody who tells you that it's not, they're lying. Because it is a life adjustment, and you begin to realize, like, okay, this is real. And like, I now have to make like some serious, life decisions that reflect, what's going on, in my life. So I'm excited. So it's New Jack City. It comes out June 4th. the EP. So the New Jack City song is really like the narrative of the whole entire project. It's basically about Chicago and all of the grit and beauty that coexists, in the city to give birth to all of the flowers that come from the concrete. I try not to get too poetic about those things, but I can't take all the credit for that line, but I try not to get too poetic, about those things. But when you come from a very rough environment, sometimes there are flowers and things that bloom and grow in the most extraordinary circumstances, like there are some lilies that grow in complete darkness. So it's really a project that talks about all of those things. So I'm really excited for it to come out. It talks about gun violence. It talks about romance, acceptance, so there's a lot of, I feel like, universal themes that people could, identify with. But for me specifically, it may be too early for me in my career to say that it is an opus, but for me personally, it's an opus for me.
That must feel so good. I was thinking when you were talking about not wanting to get too poetic, it made me think about how in some cases people will just kind of extricate just that positive moment, and then it kind of belittles all the other stuff that went on behind that and in the midst of that. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they write projects or anything really, they usually try and skim over, they try and skim that cream off the top of that milk, girl. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, we don't want that. That's fat. Put that back in the box. You know what I mean? So, but all of that makes a really good latte. That's everything that you need to be a well-rounded person. And those experiences that you think are so horrible and that you're afraid to share, guess what? They're embodiments of strength for other people. So I think we all, irregardless of whatever we suffer with in our lives, like I have HIV, things like that, I think it's important for us to share these things with people, so people can feel like they have somebody that they can turn to, because that's really why we do what we do, is so that we can make a connection through our work. And for me, that's a very important thing, and I always try and talk about all of those things, any interview that I do or give, because it's very important, if it's, multiple sclerosis, or if it's Down syndrome, whatever, so many young people, in our age group or even younger, are dealing with, a lot of issues personally, so you have suicides and things like that that are on the rise because of increased isolation, right? So this is why I do what I do, because I know that there is, some 15-year-old boy or some, 15-year-old girl who just doesn't know where the fuck they fit, in the world. And people are calling them names, because they're just trying to figure it out. And I don't think that's right, for people to say, oh, you're normal, or no, this is not normal, or, that's just not the way that life works anymore. And, I'm just grateful, that, I have the ability to kind of at least be that champion and, and rally those causes for myself. So.
Yeah, that is all. I'm just like so with you and everything that you said.
Thank you.
Like anybody who's gone through some really serious suffering in their life, which I would venture to guess is most people, but there have been some that have skated through relatively easily without too much loss and suffering. But those of us who have gone through stuff, like it doesn't just, you don't just, you can pretend it away, you can busy yourself away, but you just like go through it, and it's heavy and it hurts. And
it hurts.
And it makes people feel uncomfortable. And that's too bad. Like, open your heart, feel what other people are feeling.
Yeah. I mean, and it all, comes, like I said, full circle for me when, I wake up in the morning and I have, a post from, one of my listeners in, Africa, who says, I love you too, Dantès. And, thank you for, sharing these things. I think when people, identify with a universal pain and a universal struggle, you will find more people who can agree and stand behind that than anything that's fake or partially created, because people don't know what the hell we fucking go through, out here. I mean, there's, no one cares either, and that's okay. You don't have to care. I'm just here to remind you.
Yeah. And it's about finding the people that do care, and they're your people. They're your.
Yeah, and you know what? But see, it takes a long time to find that, right? Because you spend so much of your life trying to find acceptance from the ones that are closest to you, right? Like your family. So then what do? If that family is never, or that been that support system, or they're not that support system, and then as you grow, you begin to understand, like you were just saying, like, you can, find, people who sync with, your inner being, and who will become your family. And that's the greatest thing I think about, being an adult, is calling the shots and making all of your own decisions and saying who belongs and who doesn't. And you don't have to tolerate, the same behavior, so if you have a parent, a mother or a father who's been telling you that they love you, your whole entire life, and they still have, exhibited the same behavior towards you, as a child, guess what? As an adult, you don't have to put up with that. And I'm telling all of our listeners, you don't have to put up with that. And it's okay if you choose not to do, want to do that. Doesn't mean that you don't love them. It just means that you honor and respect and love yourself more than to put yourself back in the place of childhood.
Boy, you are just like popping out the wisdom.
Sorry, there's been a lot on my mind lately.
Oh no, I am the same. It's good. Like, it has to come out. You should start a YouTube channel. Or no, you're pretty busy with Instagram, huh?
Busy with Instagram and music and running a company, and so it's just a lot going on.
We were listening to you this morning while we were eating breakfast, and my 2 4-year-olds were just dancing. We loved it.
Oh, that's great. See, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about making good music so people can enjoy it, of all races, and everybody that's what it's about. That made me smile. Like with TikTok, a lot of kids like that song just because it's so repetitive. So, and then of course, with TikTok, the app.
I'm not leaving my 4-year-olds alone with the internet. Like,
I don't blame you. There's a lot of it's a lot of strange stuff out there. It's like the wilderness on the internet out there. It's even for us. You go searching for something and you're like, oh,
where did I end up?
I'm lost. Back. Control Alt Delete.
So I wanted to ask you, what does the New Jack City era mean? Is that's like the name of the city, or does it mean something else to you?
Well, to be honest, like for me, I'm repositioning myself here. I'm sorry. But no, for me, the New Jack era is basically the new era that I'm in sonically, spiritually, and physically. So it's just a little more harder and in your face and abrasive, like we talked about. I'm forcing you to confront, your worst fears and everyone's worst fears, and talk about things that are, uncomfortable to people, and to push buttons and to make people upset, and to say fuck you. And, I don't give a fuck if you, don't like me, or if I have AIDS or whatever, so that's what the New Jack era is. It's New Jack City, it's also a nod to, the New Jack City movie, which actually came out like in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's and the movie was literally about, a gang who essentially just took over the city and took over, a whole entire building, with their ideology and their way of thought. And that's the same thing, I feel like. So the movement is really just me saying, in a nice, toned down way, fuck you. I don't know how else to say it.
Sometimes words the word has, how do you say this? You need more strength behind it. And that's where words like this come in. Like, you need more emphasis. I remember talking to a friend once, and I had to use this word to give the emphasis for how loved and valued they were. and it was not a word I'd ever used in their presence before, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
like,
know exactly what you mean.
it's not like, oh, I'm saying this because it's crude. It's like, no, I need more power in my
Just
word.
understand how I feel and how all of the people who are marginalized feel.
Yeah.
And what better way can I show you than move away from the squeaky clean, let's kumbaya, hold our hands, children of the earth, that doesn't work anymore. Unfortunately, that's not the way of the world anymore. That doesn't get stuff done. Um, Unfortunately now, you have to take some risks, in order to, get things moving in the direction that you want it to be moved in. I mean, I get really tired of, all of the, oppression, that I deal with, on a daily basis. And, you can only imagine, I live in the States and, I'm Black and, I look different. So from the moment that I walk out of my door in the morning, honey, I'm dealing with it from, being, tailed by the police for, 2 to 3 blocks. I mean, it's unfortunate, but this is the world that we live in. And then, being, on foot, and being looked at and, and being fearful of police officers or being fearful of just people in the streets, so these are the things that, go on, in, these types of environments. And I don't think people really talk about it. And oddly enough, I had a discussion last night, and I said, I for all of my success and everything that I have done, I still am fearful of my own life as a citizen, in this country and in my own state.
It's like, I grew up in a very conservative Christian bubble, and I feel like the people that I grew up around would be more offended by the F words than about the fact that people are living in fear and poverty.
It's,
And it's like, how can you
I don't know how.
how can you say that you love God and not care about what people are going through and be more offended about what's going into your precious little ears?
I think people, it's like that's the thing, right? People, sometimes people of God like to pick and choose what commandments to obey and which ones to ignore. And being a student of the real world and knowing that there are multitudes of books that all correlate to the one being and the one truth that there is God, I know that my God is accepting and that my God cares about everybody. And ask me how I know this, because one book correlates another book. And you know that. You grew up in a very, conservative Christian family, like you said. So, just try and, learn about other cultures and other perspectives of things. I mean, if you would just, if, as a Christian, if a Christian would just pick up a Quran and look at the Quran, and if you tell me that does not send goosebumps down your spine, that book correlates and that these books correlate each other, that does not, that for me means, okay, we should all put our guns down now. We should stop the fucking fight. But hey, and be quiet because I don't want to end up disappearing. So
I'm ruffling more feathers to the people that knew me before. When I'm making up for lost time when I bought into it, to the judgment, and just, when I have to forgive myself for the horrible homophobic things that I said when I didn't know better. But I'm making up for lost time. I'm uploading a video. It went up 20 minutes ago. It's a video with the queer pastor about how the Bible isn't anti-LGBTQ.
it's not actually. See, people are, I feel like people don't know the truth, and you have to pick and choose your battles. I choose to do it the way that I choose to do it. But I am a very spiritual person, and I know for all of the things that that I have accomplished, and even the reason why I'm here, is just because of the balance of the universe, and I can find that same balance in any theological book that I pick up.
Hmm.
So, and I'm grateful for that, because that's a I feel like a wisdom that is sort of far beyond my years, I feel like. But again, like when you just go through so much, it's like you're just forced to explore, the universe and looking at it in a different way than most people wouldn't look at it, you know?
And when you grow up your whole life thinking everything is so black and white, and then
Yeah.
deconstruct and reconstruct from there, you change.
And that's the beautiful thing. And that's the beautiful thing. And I wish everybody could just have that moment of like inner self-reflection and figure out how they can make the situation better. But it always starts with ourselves, like you just said. So we're on like some very like spiritual universal vibes here today, sister. So
I love it. Do you think that this would be a good time to segue into gender roles and gender stereotypes and attitudes?
absolutely. I'm
Juicy.
for it.
Oh man, I've been angry at gender stereotypes and roles for such a long time. So long. I made a video about it a while back. I'll put the link up here. I was exploring in this video that if I had had the terminology for that non-binariness was a thing, there's only two genders.
Yeah.
If I might have latched onto that, like, of not feeling like I don't feel the way that I feel like a female is supposed to feel, like I don't care about my looks, I don't care about girly things. But then how much of that is cultural? Like my husband, he doesn't care about fixing trucks and going fishing.
I think you bring up a really good point. It's funny that you bring that up, because you just said your husband doesn't, care about, that stuff. And I feel like a lot of people are probably like your husband, myself included. Like, like I always knew, like growing up, that I was different. And it wasn't different in a sense that like, hey, I feel like a girl or I feel like a boy, because trust me, like, I was out there knocking motherfuckers' heads off too with the football, So, I could totally do, all the stuff that, an ordinary guy, I guess, would be, suspected of. But I also had like this very deep desire to like explore, all of the things that were, I guess, feminine or woman-like in nature. And that was just always something that I always felt was there, and as a kid, especially back then, right, like, in the middle 90s, like there was no term really, for that, so if you were a kid, it was just like, oh, give that motherfucker some Ritalin. He's having some issues, kid falls over in his plate. You get what I'm saying? That was the world back then, right? Thank God, like we don't, I'm so grateful, like my nephews and nieces and stuff, like if there's anything that goes on with them now as children, like they don't have to go through like what we did. It's so funny because it's like we're not old and it wasn't that long ago, but it's just shocking to think that people thought like that back then. And I remember them always like trying to take my makeup and like hiding my makeup and shit from me and telling me that it was wrong. And like, yeah, so it was, so I always knew that, that was who I am, and I spent a lot of time, growing up because of those circumstances, trying to, pivot away from, who I was. And I was very unhappy. And it wasn't like it's not like I was, trying to pretend to be a woman or a man. I was just being myself, which is, yeah, just a normal human being.
Your creativity.
Yeah, just a normal human being who, who happens to, not think of himself as man or female. And I take that back to, also too, because you're a spiritual person, you grew up in, so the good book, and angels were what? Angels were
Neither.
yeah. And
I
I
believe God
really
is non-binary. Like, it's not like
I totally
he's a man who made women and is like, oh, they're so mysterious. What do I do with
yeah,
them?
yeah. No, I totally believe that. And that's why, in every uh media representation of the voice of God, you hear a duality. You hear both male and you hear female. And that's why he says, I am that I am. People don't know, like that's the real truth, that it is harmonious balance. It is the same thing. Even if we step out of the Bible for a second and we take it to nature, is nature not both giving and both cruel? Is it not both light and is it both not dark? Is it both not man and is it both not woman? So these are all of the things that give power to the universe. You cannot have one without the other. They were created in tandem together. It was when we separated them is when we had problems.
I'm getting this vibe that you're like a preacher.
No, not at all. Not at all. Shit. The room would probably start boiling when I walk in the room, girl. But I really believe that, though. And it's funny how you just grow and you begin to learn, how things really, really are. And I just wish more people would just be more open-minded to just go out there and read and do the research on your own, and that, like you said, I was glad you said that. You're like, God is binary. Hell yes, God is binary. What idiot, let me stop, because like we both probably would like burn in hell, like in church right now if we said this, but like what idiot would, like who in the hell in 2021 has backwards ass thoughts like that? And if they are, then I don't want to talk to them. I just don't.
There's just so much cultural pressure put on people that is just ridiculous. Did you ever see the movie West Side Story?
Oh, of course. I love that movie so much.
There's one girl in this movie who's not like make 5 pounds of makeup and big boobs and everything. It's that girl who's like, hey guys, what can I do to help? And they're like, oh, put a dress on. Like, and did you ever see Umbrella Academy?
Oh, I love that movie. That's a great movie.
I was just so happy, because when we started watching it, Elliot hadn't come out yet. But I was so happy to see that there was a woman on a show that didn't have to be so girly, just wearing men's clothes, just simple hair. And nothing drawing attention to curves, simple hair, no makeup. And I was like, representation of a female that's not coiffed.
But also too, in the same token, what I began to realize too as I got older, as I started getting more comfortable with myself and my clothing choices, and as I became more familiar with history, I also began to realize that certain things that were attributed to women were once just the things of nobility, and only kings wore heels, or only the aristocrats could afford makeups. And like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Like, this is shit that was made for everybody. Like, and we fast forward, 200, 300 years, and oh God, you're like, no, that's not for men. You can't wear that. You can't wear that. No, heels are meant for people to stand over their subjects, and that was why they were worn. Only the queens and the kings wore that, so when they walked in the room, they were taller than their subjects. Dumbasses. Like, I hate this world so much.
Me too. Like for example, this whole thing of men aren't allowed to cry, suck it up, no emotions. Boys aren't allowed to play with dolls. They might, Maybe they'll be fathers one day. Maybe you want a person that you can connect with on an emotional level. Like, don't tell kids to
They
stop
can't play with
feeling.
a doll. And that's another thing too. And there's a lot of that too, where they're like, oh well, that's forcing something on a child. I have grown up with so many various like types of people. There were guys that I grew up with who as kids, right? No one's thinking about anything like that. You're just playing with your damn toys. You're not even thinking, hell, you just might want a damn Barbie doll so your GI Joe can run over her ass. I mean, like, what's wrong with people? And I grew up with some people and some guys who, so having you know toys as children, people need to cut this stuff out with kids, especially like that does not make a child. A child is a child, and a child is allowed to be a child. So if a child is in a safe environment, why should a child not be allowed to play around with shit? I'm
Yeah.
not gonna beat my kid's ass because I catch him running around in some heels and some makeup. He's having some damn fun. Let him have some fun. Like, you know, and then if he comes back, you know, if he comes and he says, hey, hey dad, I'm feeling this way and this is why I was doing these things. And then I'll say, okay, son, you like it, I love it, that's what you want to do, that's okay. And then there are those kids who will grow up and will not even think anything of that shit that happened when they were kids. Like I said, I played house and dressed up with lots of kids where I was putting makeup on their lips and stuff growing up. And a lot of those guys are not, now have, wives and families, and we're still friends and stuff like that. So like none of that stuff means anything. And I feel like it's society who places this pressure on us. It's almost like with sugar, right? That's like the first cult that we become indoctrinated in, right? As kids, sugar, from the time we're 5 years old, you see the sugar smacks commercials, the corn puffs, all of that stuff is an indoctrination into that. So if you come up being fed that all the time, you're going to believe that that's what you're supposed to do, not knowing that clothes and makeup and these are just all fucking extensions that are of how people choose to reflect their inner self and their being, and they have no merit, truly.
Totally. Just let kids be kids, for the love of
Just
mud.
let them be kids. Like I hate when I see that stuff like on cartoons and stuff. Just let kids be kids. Like you should not be reprimanding kids because kids are being kids. That's what kids do. Kids of all ages are going to go play in their damn parents' makeup. What the hell? What the hell?
My poor kids. I guess I'll need to get some dollar store stuff so they have something to play with, because I just can't be bothered.
Just get some crayons.
They have plenty of friends.
Oh well, they're fine. They're fine. They're fine. And also too, and then the thing of some people, some kids may not take to makeup. It's all just everyone's opinion of how they choose to personify and reflect who they are. I'm certainly not polished up all the time, but sometimes the occasion must call for it when one must be painted and stretched. So
That makes me think about how it must be one of those times to get painted and stretched when you go to a club, but you must miss that so much, to be able to be with a group of people and play your music.
I miss people so much. I miss people a lot, but in the same breath, I'm not a club person unless I absolutely have to be, and that's only when I have records to promote or I'm on tour or things like that. But honestly, for the most part, people would be shocked to find that I'm actually a homebody. And my home, is my safe space and it's my creative space. And so when I'm always constantly like creating and doing things like that. So going to the club is usually a piece of a recipe that must be put into the oven, but that's not required to be eaten. The club's a lot. I mean, especially when you work in those environments. it sounds crazy, but I would think probably that any entertainer, probably regardless of level, at some point would start to have a disdain for these places unless they're not working. Because you're dealing clubs are really hot. Clubs are really hot. They're really fun, but it's exhausting. Because it's all about energy, and after you've done your set, you're ready, to go back to your room or hotel and go to sleep, but the energy is still going. So for me, I don't like to go to those places because it's almost like having like a shot, and you have your withdrawals from it, so I try and only go to the club when it's necessary for me to promote a record, or I have to make an appearance. Making appearances are necessary sometimes, but
It's like everything that is so, looks so cool from an outsider's perspective, it all like adds up to have parts that you love and parts that you hate. It's like, oh, it would be so cool to be in a different city every night. I've been in a different city every night for a few weeks. It's exhausting. You just want to stop.
Very exhausting. It's very exhausting. Yeah.
And what's really
very exhausting
that people don't think about is the mental energy of being awake and present and pleasant for people.
Oh my God, yeah. And that whole, like having to like you said, be on all the time for people, because trust me, sometimes you're just gonna be like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you, But, I try and of course, give everybody respect. It's a growing pain. It's definitely a growing pain. Because sometimes you do want to, you're like, oh, I'm just a normal person, but you're sharing yourself with the world, and that's a good thing, so you can't complain about it, and I won't.
Yeah, I love people. I want to talk to everyone. Like, but living in Sweden has made me a bit more reserved than I had been. Like before, if I'd heard people speak English in a supermarket, I would be running over to them, English.
Oh my God, hello.
Let's be best friends.
Yes, we speak the same language.
But now,
where are you from?
Now I'm like, they're gonna be upset if I interrupt them. I'm turning more Swedish now.
Oh my gosh, are you really?
A little bit. But
well, that might not be a problem.
But it's like the best thing in the world to be able to have these kind of conversations. It just makes me so happy to connect and just have heart to hearts.
Mm-hmm.
You have such kind people in your comment section on Instagram. And I was wondering if you wanted to maybe give any of them a shout out. If you share this link and they watch it and they're like, oh my gosh, you said my name.
Oh, wow. Any special shout outs? You know what? So this morning, I actually woke up to an Instagram tag from a listener in Africa, and his name is Billy Tystar on Instagram. And so, yeah, I just want to send him, a lot of love and light, and thank you for listening. And yeah, really, thank you. Because it's good to wake up to stuff like that in the morning, because like we said, we always encounter some type of adversity, every morning, when we wake up in some way. So for me this morning, that was like such a beautiful and like refreshing thing to wake up to. So shout out to Billy Tystar on IG.
Oh, that's cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, or story, or whatever?
I just want to let all of our listeners and viewers know that in addition to the New Jack City EP that comes out June 4th, there will be a Dantès' New Jack City 16-bit mobile game that will be available on iTunes and also in the Google Play Store.
Yeah, I read a little bit about that. That looks really fun.
I'm very excited about it. Very, very excited about it. Been in development now for probably about a month now. We're winding down to the release and packaging all of that up. So we'll have some 3-hit combos, ready to, show the world, and probably in the next couple of days, actually, I'm thinking. So really great team of people who assist me in helping, with this vision that I have. So I think it's a very cohesive extension to the EP. And then just trying to like create like this world, around my narrative and New Jack City, which is Chicago. So
That's cool. So it's like an immersive experience.
yeah, that was the idea. I wanted to kind of have a full, immersive experience that I could, continue to grow and revisit, and different incarnations of media. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. So because Dantès is not only now, just a musician, but now also he's also a character. So it's it's really cool. So his powers obviously are going to be used for good, and he is going to kick bigots' ass, and that will be that.
Thank you so much. The way that I end my videos is I give hugs. Hugs.
Thank you. I'll take that hug. I love you.
I love the different reactions I get from people. Like some people are like kind of confused a little bit, but it's fun.
Well, they ain't ever had no love if they ain't ever had a hug.
We can talk again sometime, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how your career turns out and the leaps and bounds that you will inevitably make.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Can't stop, tick-tock, the beat won't stop. Can't stop, tick-tock, the beat won't stop. Can't stop. I don't know.